We called a meeting today to discuss Henry, the lovely little child in year 7. Have you guys come across Henry in some of your classes or heard about him?
Yeah, Henry, he has dysgraphia, right? Pretty, he's like 13, sweet kid, very friendly. Um, yeah, wants to always do his best and tries his
Yeah,
hardest. Yeah, I have him
Yeah,
in
I
history.
think I think that's the one. Yeah, I do have
Yeah,
him in my maths class as well. He's a very lovely kid and obviously wants to do his best. And obviously
yeah,
there are some learning difficulties as you mentioned with the dysgraphia. So
yeah.
thought we'd sort of run a quick session today to see what we can sort of do to help him with his learning, especially at the moment, given that exams and stuff are around the corner.
hmm
Just to give him a bit of a heads up and a bit of a helping hand as well. As you mentioned, Anita, that you are aware of dysgraphia. Arnav, I know you take him
Yeah,
for one of your classes. Are you aware of what dysgraphia is by any chance?
Kind of, but not really. I mean, would someone be able to fill me in?
yeah,
Yeah,
Arnav,
no,
it's a. Oh, sorry, Dan, you go if you
uh,
like. Or it's
yeah,
a neurological disorder, basically, Arnav. Um, but essentially affects like the motor based. He's got like I believe Dan, are you aware? It's like a motor based dysgraphia, so it affects his fine motor skills and it can impact like handwriting, written expression. So his handwriting can be quite messy. It takes him time to get things down on paper. So he can fall behind that way, and particularly in history where we have big chunks of text and things to look at. It makes it quite hard.
spot on.
Yeah.
And look, the problems that I'm having with him in maths is obviously his processing speed and as well as with his fluency. So
Yeah.
look, myself, and a few others from the maths department have tried to sort of work with him to sort of develop a deeper understanding between the relationship of adding and subtracting.
hmm
So we feel that obviously at the moment with the year sevens, we've just started a new topic on algebra, and we sort of worked with the lesson sequence that we had in place and try to find ways to help him out to obviously boost his fluency and again develop that deeper understanding of that relationship between adding and subtracting within obviously the context of algebra. Yeah.
hmm
So what I'll do is I'll just quickly go through some of the things that we've sort of discussed as a group that we've implemented for him, to sort of see what we can do to help him out. And hopefully, again, if you guys do have input, by all means, yeah, bring it to the table. And then one activity that I thought I'd sort of go through with you guys and discuss, obviously with the use of counters, obviously which kid doesn't love Smarties and M&Ms.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
obviously we thought we'd provide sort of a kinesthetic and visual perspective for Henry with maths. And obviously we find it's a fun way for him to obviously find out, adding and subtracting. So if a friend gives him three more Smarties, there's a friend comes by and takes a couple of Smarties off his desk, and see how he feels, and again build up that relationship, as I said, with the understanding of adding and subtracting.
hmm
And I think this activity as well, even though it is differentiated for Henry, I still feel that it helps him not feel left out in the classroom. So he's still able to participate, and he's still able to get something out of the class accordingly. One other thing that we sort of did with algebra, with writing algebraic expressions. So we know that Henry loves his footy. So
hmm
we did a sort of a worked example where obviously we were looking at score sheets at footy, in a footy game rather.
Yep.
So obviously six 6A plus 1B would equal the total amount of points a footy team has scored in a game. So we actually went with Henry and tried to look at those, and he enjoyed that exercise in and amongst the banter. He was able to find that I guess that relationship between adding and subtracting, as well as with obviously with algebra in real life. So we find that linking it with real life concepts really helps students like Henry to
Awesome.
persevere through with the curriculum.
Just looking over the notes of your sequence that you've sent Arnav and I through,
Mm-hmm.
is I guess the assessment, whether it's formative, summative at the end, are you looking for him to basically get a hold or grasp that worded problem sequence? Like, is that the overall the end goal of this learning sequence for you, for him to get his mind around those worded problems and be able to take a worded problem and solve that problem? Like, is that the end goal to
Yeah, I
get
mean,
there for him?
look, yeah,
Yeah.
ideally it would be to obviously, to meet the success criteria that has been
Mhm.
set there
Yep.
according in the plan. But yeah,
Yeah.
obviously, look, in terms of with the bigger picture, being from year seven, we feel that that is sort of the main overarching aspect of him. Understanding those relationships between adding and subtracting. You may even include multiplying and dividing as well in that same breath. But yeah, for us, it's obviously for him to see how much of the success criteria within the curriculum he can meet, as well as obviously meeting that overarching theme of him understanding that relationship. Because then again, as soon as he gets a better understanding of that relationship, the more he'd be successful down the track in terms of with other, if he chooses to pursue mathematics, that would obviously be a core element for him to do so.
Absolutely. In terms of the Smarty idea is great, and it's really hands-on, which I think will help him. In terms of when he's got, say, a word problem in front of him, maybe it helps to have something like a counter piece of Lego, something he can physically pick up. And I mean, I know Henry loves to draw as well, so whether he can do something on OneNote, so it helps him sort of draw out the problem or physically touch something, counter or something, to work through that problem so he can make that connection to the words. He's got that physical sort of hands-on aspect as well to maybe work through. I don't know if that's something that the LSO integration aid has maybe spoken about as well. There's not a lot in terms of what we're going through at the moment in history that sort of overlaps, but that may be one point to think about down the track.
Arnav, in terms of from your end, is there anything that you feel that you would consider adding, given what we've discussed so far?
I like everything you're saying, and the logic behind it makes a lot of sense. I remember not too long ago having a chat with Anita about this. So she mentioned something about using games and bringing games into the classroom to get the students engaged, interacting, and really, I suppose, creating that community spirit through which learning can really thrive. So what I'm thinking from, say, a business perspective, building off of, Daniel, what you're doing in your class with mathematics and numbers, introducing something such as Monopoly. It's a game which is interactive. It's got a lot of moving parts to it. But what I could potentially look at doing is breaking it down bit by bit and going, okay, so we've got the mathematics element. How much rent do you have to pay? How much to purchase a property? How much to mortgage? And through that, also discussing and defining the elements. What is mortgage? What is rent? What happens when you have multiple properties? And bring in those kind of concepts as well. So I think that will help with the interaction side of things. I do think working with a learning aid to also really drive this point home and to focus in our efforts will add a lot of value, especially going forward. At the end of the day, Anita, was it Vygotsky? Was it him that talked about?
Yeah, the zone of proximal development. Is that where you're going?
That's the one. Yeah. So I'm definitely thinking taking that kind of framework, right, and building it up around him so that he can scaffold upwards, and as he progresses from year 7 to 8 to 9, you basically don't lose him or don't forget him, quite essentially, and can keep building up. Now, Anita, you mentioned something about using games as well in the past. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, great idea. I really like the approach too. So I did something a few months ago in history, which actually Henry really loved because it looked at his interests of construction as well. But there's a game, I don't know if you guys have heard about it. It's called Civilization 6. So we were looking at like ancient civilizations in history. So your Greece, your Egypt. Basically, this game is quite interactive. You essentially pick a leader of a civilization and you build up your you work as a team. I had them in teams and they basically worked to build a civilization online. They've got to pick a certain plot of land. They have to build villages, and for their people they need to ensure that there's enough food and supplies for the people in their village, basically build up that civilization. And then it's quite strategic in terms of there may be attacks from other groups of people. So it's quite a game that's interactive, which he really liked, particularly that construction piece about building, picking plots for different buildings or structures around the village as well, counting how many people in an army as an example, and to defend this land that's being built up. There was research involved as well, but because it was a group activity, each person in the group was assigned or worked out amongst themselves what parts they wanted to play in terms of, one did the research, one did the actual gameplay, one scribed some notes to look strategically going forward. And that just gave them that autonomy as well in terms of, Henry's like, well, I'd rather do the gameplay because I don't want to write anything as well. So that seemed to work well. And I know it's hard to bring that into maths, but the Monopoly aspect, that may be something that he loves as well, Arnav, because he could pair up, partner up. You could do it that way. If he didn't want to work on his own, if there was a friend of his in business that he works quite well with, that might be an option as well. But those sort of different, looking at things from a different angle, not just reading chunks of text from a history book or getting him to look through and answer some questions, it's just something different. That's how we approached it for that sequence a couple of months ago.
Sounds good.
I like it. And once again, having the whole team aspect, not doing it by yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Scaffolding.
Yeah.
Breaking down complex things into smaller pieces.
Yeah,
All these things
exactly.
should add to a better learning experience.
That whole Vygotsky piece that you mentioned before, he was able to learn from his peers as well. They could question him on, what he was doing physically in the game as well. So it was a good activity, and we did that over a number of lessons too. So there was a bit of research beforehand. There was a few lessons of gameplay. So it was really engaging for not only him, but the entire class.
Just to confirm, Daniel, having these differentiation techniques, which helps our particular learner, we can also apply it to the wider class and wider community, and that way really create that sense of community. Would that be correct?
Yeah, so obviously, as I said earlier, in terms of with the Smarties exercises, that can be seen as in many instances a fun, enjoyable task. And if I was to provide Henry with a different task while his peers are enjoying M&Ms and Smarties and the like, he would feel a bit left out. So I feel like just in that instance of an exercise like that, including him with the general class activities, again, as Anita mentioned, that notion of peer-to-peer learning as well. I think it will just help him again engage more and make him feel more of the cohort within the cohort. Sorry, and not being felt that he's left behind because of his learning difficulties. So yeah, I think exercises like the Smarties exercises just helps him collaborate with his peers, with his class, and help him along the journeys.